Grandma Eve has just died, and several of her family members from the East Coast wish to visit and view her body on the West Coast. This doesn't present a problem because they have decided to give Eve a traditional American funeral. A traditional American funeral involves embalming. Without embalming, she would needs to be buried quickly and could probably not be viewed. Today, I'll explain the process of embalming, history of embalming, the strengths and criticisms, and the alternatives to embalming. First off, I'd like to say that embalming slows the decomposition down. It doesn't preserve the body. On whitegear.com, I found out this whole process. The first step requires the mortician to clean and wash the body and rid it of any bacteria. And then the mortician needs to massage the body and get rid of any stiff joints that the person developed while they died. Next step requires the mortician to place eye caps under the eyes so that they remain closed when being viewed. The next step requires either the mouth to be sewn with a metal hook, have a towel placed under, a rolled up towel placed underneath the chin so that for a certain amount of hours so that the mouth remains closed, or to have a mouth warmer placed in the mouth for a long time. An incision must be made in either the armpit or groin so that the blood can be drained through an artery. Then the abdominal cavity needs to be respirated, which means dry. And then a combination of formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, methanol, penol, and water are combined to make a formaldehyde solution. This is then pumped into the body, which helps slow decomposition down. And it gives the skin its natural color so that the person doesn't look too dead in its coffin. This is the machine that pumps the formaldehyde solution into the person's body. Science writer Mary Roach writes about two very important historic arterial embalming moments in history. The first took place in the 1600s when three Dutch biologists drained the blood from people's arteries in their bodies and pumped their bodies full of alcohol. This was because there was a shortage of human cadavers, and they needed more and more cadavers for the medical school at the time. The second most important arterial embalming history moment is when Thomas Holmes, who is now known as the modern-day godfather of arterial embalming, embalmed 4,000 out of the 35,000 soldiers that died at that time himself. This was so that soldiers that had died in the war could be shipped back to their family and buried at home. After the Civil War, he even patented his own formaldehyde solution, and undertakers would use this when embalming the dead. Lisa Howard Fusco writes about the strengths and the weaknesses that formaldehyde now poses. One is that when an ill-deceased person dies, maybe from cancer, maybe from a horrible accident, they can be rejuvenated and look normal and presentable to the family. But she also criticizes and focuses on the environmental hazards. In an interview I conducted with Hester Vanderveen, a sociology professor at CSU East Bay, she was also very critical about the formaldehyde and embalming process. Vanderveen pointed out that toxins affect the morticians that conduct the embalming themselves. And if you think cremation is the answer to embalming, think again, because bodies are embalmed when families want a traditional funeral with a viewing, and then cremated after. Alternatives to embalming have surfaced in recent years. Techniques include applying dry ice to the torso, rubbing the skin with special oils that kill bacteria off, and a family could still view the body, but it would have to be under a short amount of time. There are other traditional environmental friendly alternatives to this process. For example, Caitlin Dowdy, a female mortician, describes a place called Joshua's Tree Memorial Park, where bodies are wrapped in a shroud and laid on the ground to decompose naturally. The human body is recycled into the soil and involves no chemical process nor coffin. Dr. Vanderveen also mentioned this alternative, saying, feeding your body to the earth is a more beautiful way of decomposing. Caitlin Dowdy also states that there is a place in the South where it is actually legal to burn a body in funeral pyre. This service is provided by a small family-owned business, and the family of the deceased brings the family member themselves, and the small family-owned business brings the pyre and conducts the service while the family gathers around. A final alternative to a traditional funeral is to donate your body to science. An article published in a nursing magazine in 2017 in PRN recommends this alternative. Researchers studying diseases today may use cadavers, dead bodies, and medical students and surgeons may use your body for dissections. All you have to do is pre-register and make sure a lawyer or next of kin make sure your body is donated. And Dr. Vanderveen assured me donating your body to the science is the most unselfish thing you can do with your body after death. When the human body no longer has a purpose, it is then cremated and sent back to the family free of charge. Bodies donated to science are embalmed and then cremated when no longer of use. However, this has a huge benefit to society. Today I explained the process of embalming, touched on a brief amount of history of embalming, and identified the main criticisms in the process. By reading literature and interviewing an expert on death and dying, I learned a lot about embalming I didn't know before, and I hope you have today as well. Thank you.